I'm in the Bellingen Youth Hub with Labor candidate for the seat of Oxley, SusanJenvey. Sue, welcome to Backchat.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Tell me, why and when did you move to Valor on the mid-north coast?
Well, it's probably about 21 years ago, something like that. I had a job at the Cool Creek Cafe when it first started here.
In Bellingen?
Yeah, the very first iteration of the Cool Creek Cafe.
Yeah.
So I don't know what year it was, but it was a long time ago. And then I left after that to go up to Brisbane for about 3 or 4 years and chased work and did some media work up there. And then I came back and I had a partner who grew up here in Coffs Harbour. His parents were some of the sort of original hippies in Coffs Harbour, and he left Sydney and ended up schooling in Coffs, and so was kind of a local. And he had children from a previous marriage, and that brought us really back to this district. And we just loved Valor and started to manage macadamia farms, and then ended up, with some help, buying our parents' farm when they no longer wanted to do it. So.
Good. Now you're also a councillor on the Nambucca Shire.
Yep.
What has that taught you about politics?
Local government, you're very this is the closest form of government to the people, and you've got to learn to look after them, and you've got to learn how systems, social systems work.
And Michael Daly's recently become the new leader of the New South Wales Labor Party. How's he fitting in the new role? What can you tell us about him?
He's very urbane when you go and deal with him. He's very warm and friendly and quite real. Like, I met him at Kempsey Markets and he was so thrilled to see us for a catch-up. So, he's interested in all our campaigns. He's interested in how things are faring in rural New South Wales.
All right. Now, do you feel like you're a part of the Labor machine now that you're running for a seat, even though you don't you don't hold the seat? Do you feel like you're getting, you get caught up in everything that's happening there? Do they take you down to Parliament House and say, look, if elected, this is where you sit, Sue, and you sit down and try out your chair and things like that? Does that happen?
Yes and no. No, there's been no trip to Parliament House, but we do go down for our state conferences and things like that. These have been seen as rusted on National Party seats, and when resources are scarce, you've got to concentrate on your resources on where you think the seats are swinging the most. But it's a bit different this election. I mean, and not only because Michael is a very personable person that likes people contact and wants to be in contact with his candidates, but you get the sense there's a fairly big swing on, and we don't know how big that swing is.
Do you know what swing you require to?
Yeah, 10.5%.
10.5%.
Which is big.
It's big, but in context with other elections that we've had lately, that it's not impossible anymore.
No.
So what do you think are the major issues?
Yeah, well, I'd like action on climate change, so let's get supercharged with renewables. Labor's got quite a few plans there for transitioning coal mining workers out from the Hunter and putting in major solar power hubs down there and job energy creation centres. There's the issue of spending the snowy hydro money. I'm not sure if Melinda's government hasn't tried to tie it up in bits and pieces, but that's all about creating rural jobs. So I think that's really interesting. Obviously, there's a big role to play in Oxley in using culture and art for our visitor economy. We've got 10.3 million visitor nights in the electorate, so it's a fairly substantial piece of economy there. So you'd like to see we're going to spend some money on Main Street revitalisation and those sorts of things to help some of those businesses along and make places like Nambucca that are a bit of a concrete bunker, more attractive. It is all about jobs, and we've got the greater connectivity of the highway now that makes this a lot more attractive, not only as a stopover halfway between Sydney and Brisbane, but for all our inter traffic from the towns and centres here. It's a lot more pleasing to go and visit.
Mm-hmm. Affordable housing seems to be a big issue in the Bellingen Shire. Can state Labor play a part in assisting with affordable housing?
I know it needs to happen. I've come across, women that have had careers in media and in science, and they weren't homeowners and they don't have a partner at 70, whatever, and they are struggling to pay rent and live off the pension, and they're living in this really ghastly genteel poverty where they're turning the hot water system off and just having one hot shower a week, and you think, yeah, these people deserve much more than that. I mean, I just have this vision, you might be poor, but I don't see why you couldn't have a deep veranda for, a deck for living space and a 2-bedroom unit. I think we build the wrong type of housing up here. It's all family, 3 or 4 bedroom houses, which is not appropriate for young people, and it's not appropriate for old people. So having a look at the type of housing stock that gets built as well. But it's definitely about collaborations between the different levels of state government and the community groups, and trying to apply some flexibility or new ideas. So we're listening, we're open, we're in that space, and there's people that want to work with it. I just think it will, if we just keep going down this path, it's going to become a bigger issue if it's not dealt with. So it's really hard.
The NBN rollout, are we getting the best available?
No.
For a rural area, and what can New South Wales Labor and SusanJenvey do about that?
Oh, gee, picked a hard one there. It is a federal issue, so it's not so much a state issue. So there is that component of it. But what should have been, one of Labor's greatest infrastructure achievements in Australia is turned out to be a dog's breakfast. It's second rate, the fibre to the curb. Everybody knows that fixed wireless is not fantastic if you're a high-tech business or wanting to leverage off the tech like some people in this town do. So, we know we've got that digital divide here. I think all Labor's said is we can't get access to the NBN and their costings to say what we can do. So they're talking about some pathways forward through that. You've got people agitating that they want more and expect more. Well, I guess that gets a result, but it's cold comfort to people going through this now, and it's affecting investment decisions. But really, Labor can't do anything until they have a look at what's been spent. Most of it's been rolled out and spent and built now, and what the costings will be to do some improvements or offer some choice. So I don't know what that means. I'm afraid it's not what we could have had, and there's no quick or easy fix.
Now, my research tells me that the seat of Oxley has only ever been held by the National Party. What makes you think that the electorate's ready for a change? I
think this electorate's changing, and I believe the Nationals haven't changed, but I think the electorate is changing. And, they've never looked after tree changes. They've not looked after Aboriginal people particularly. They've not looked after people who are more marginal and without a job in these places. So there's that component that is growing all the time. And I just think people want a bit more than the same old communities and those people who are active in the community, being seen to. We want new ideas, and we want the environment protected, and we want action on climate change, and we want new jobs, and we don't want the same as what's been happening. We want a different economy. I really think they're a government that fails to govern properly. So, and that's because the way they value they don't value government being in our economy and being able to do things for our economy. And, they've cut the public service back to the bone. And, so I don't think they run contracts properly. I don't think they value how a government can actually activate an economy. And I think this is where we need to revisit and move forward. You see in Coffs Harbour they took the Department of Housing out of Coffs, so that was 80 jobs on an average of about $80,000 per annum. So it's a lot of money you take out of the town when you don't run government services. And they've cut jobs in national parks and wildlife, and it's a short-term gain by doing that, because there's a lot of feral pests, both flora and fauna now, that comes onto the community and farmers that have to deal with. So we want our national parks kept and maintained as these great places in our environment to go and visit, but and maintain our ecologies and places for animals to be. And we want, them not to be fire hazards and not to be breeders of weeds or have bell miner dieback because you haven't, done anything about, those sort of birds and managing them properly. So, this is where I think it breaks down their really small government approach, and it's not working. And really, this is a really interesting thing that, and is undervalued or needs to be revalued, how much government, actually puts back into an economy by what they do. So, when we say we're going to spend money on renewable energy, that's a whole new job sector that will be influenced by government policy. And so in that regard, I think what governments do is great, and I don't want governments to get out of the way so that the private sector can do things, because they obviously don't do things better. Otherwise, I think we'd be functioning much better as a state.
I guess their argument is that they're always trying to balance the budget at the end of the day, and certain cuts are made. How do you think Labor can manage that money better? It's
going to be really hard if we get it back into power, because they've privatised and sold off all the monopoly assets that, particularly the poles and wires. But this was recurrent government funding. They've sold off the Lands Titles Office, and that was, millions of dollars that would come in every year into government coffers to run programs and do things that you want to do. So they've been relying on sales tax to run the budget in surplus. Well, with this downturn we're having in housing, that money is not there. So they're in real trouble. They thought they'd just recycle assets, sell off roads or whatever, and put it into new stuff. But they've got $13 billion in budget blowouts from what they've done. They've not completed one major significant piece of infrastructure in the time they've been in office. And, we slipped from being the number one state in Australia down to number two. And I think you'll find going forwards, the spending is going to be very difficult. So Labor's aware of this, but at the moment they've just got a big suitcase full of money from having sold off all our public assets. So, and they think they can rebuy themselves back into power with that. But like I say, you've really got to look at values and really got to look at how a government can activate our economy in the right way that moves us forward, in a way that's acceptable of spending public money. I think it will take 10 years to fix up the mess they've made of the public servants so that we've got a functioning state. So I think they've left us in a perilous state. I think they're a ghastly government, and I really think, we need a government that can govern. So that's where I'm at.
Great. SusanJenvey, thank you for joining me on Backchat for I Love Bello Shire at the Bello Youth Hub, and good luck in the March state election.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thanks for having me.